Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to boost your child's self-esteem while they're struggling with anxiety and OCD. And often, we are all hands on deck to help our kids with their anxiety or OCD. That is our number one focus, priority, and we're all in with that. And while our kids are really struggling with anxiety or OCD, their self-esteem is taking a major hit often because it's just so upsetting to feel debilitated. So today I want to talk to you about some simple ways, not adding to your plate, but some really simple ways that we can help boost our child's self-esteem, their morale, their self-image of who they are, their idea of who they are as a person, while we continue helping them crush their anxiety or OCD. But before we get started, I want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is a right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com. I will leave a link in the show notes as well. I also want to let you know about a free webinar that I have that I think ties in with this theme that we're going to be talking about today. I have a free webinar called How to Build Your Child's Skills to Independently Crush OCD. Part of the self-esteem struggle too is to feel disempowered, to feel so dependent. And so ironically, when we are building our child's skills to be independent, to have these skills to help themselves, to have the skills to self-regulate, to have the skills to do brave things, to tackle intrusive thoughts on their own, they start to feel better. There's more self-efficacy. I can help myself, more agency. And it starts with little tiny movements, little seeds that we plant from the get-go, or that you can be planting now as they're in crisis or as they're struggling. You can be planting these independent seeds. And I'll tell you how to do it. And it's free. Just register at atparentingsurvivalseries.com/OCD-webinar-workbook. I know that's a mouthful. And check that out. I'll leave a link in the show notes as well for you to register for that free series. It's on demand, so just register and then you can watch it and watch it whenever you want. Okay, let's dive into today. So when I'm thinking about today's topic, I'm really thinking about the kids that are struggling right now. But the things I'm going to talk about can really be for any child. I just wanted, in my head, I was thinking about the parents that are going to say to me, I can't focus on self-esteem. My child can't even get out of bed. Or how am I supposed to make them feel good when they literally feel horrible? They can't function. They can't leave the house. So I wanted to think about that level of acuity, that level of severity, and come up with things that could be doable even for kids in that situation. And so they absolutely will be applicable to kids that are doing better than that because it'll be even easier. So that was kind of my mindset as I was making this list of things that we can do. And part of it is I was thinking about things that I'm doing at home. A little insight into me. I'm always like, what should I talk about my podcast? And I've got my AT parenting community and I'm always talking to parents in there. So I'm always seeing what struggles are the most prevalent. And then I think about my home and my struggles. And really I can speak the most passionately about a lot of times things that I'm experiencing, to be totally honest. A lot of times I'll talk about things that are completely irrelevant to my family situation. And it's something that I see in the AT parenting community. But this was one that is something that we deal with a lot in my house. And it's something that I've been dealing with my son in particular, is how to help him feel good about himself when his anxiety and OCD makes him feel bad about himself. And I know that is such a common struggle that we all have, that I wanted to talk about it today. So these are all things that I've done in my house. I was trying to brainstorm and I was like, what things do I do? And it's a work in progress. So I think it's important to preface this whole podcast episode with this. We are only one component of our child's self-esteem. I often tell the AT parenting community. So the AT parenting community, because I know I'm referencing it a lot, they're my membership community. So these are parents that are in my paid community, and we do a lot together. So we do live classes on Zoom. We have support group calls each month for them and for their kids, and they have access to the forums on our member website where they can talk to me directly through the forums and ask me questions all the time, all day long if they want to. And so I get to know those parents really well and their situations really well. So this is something that I say to them a lot. I'll say, because I feel like every time I do a live class in there, I say this at one point or another. I'll say we're only one piece of the puzzle in our kids' journey with anxiety or OCD. So if you're in the AT parenting community, you're going to be like, yes, I hear her say that all the time. But it's true. We're only one piece of the puzzle. And with our child's self-esteem, we're only one piece of the puzzle. There's so many other players and factors that come into their self-esteem. We can't own it 100%. And I want you to realize that you can't own your child's struggles 100%, and you can't own their self-esteem 100%, just like you can't own their success 100%. You're only one piece of the puzzle, whether it's good, it's bad, or it's ugly. You are one component, not the whole component. So I think that's important to hear. So we can do our things. And if you are, well, I'm like, my brain is all over the place today. If you wanted to know more about the AT parenting community, you can go to atparentingcommunity.com. There's like a little voice inside my head that's like, you didn't even tell them about where they can go. It's an annoying, nagging voice. And I'm going to tune it out so I can focus on what first steps we're going to want to take when we're building self-esteem. So the first thing, and these are not in any particular order, I am a list maker. And so whenever I'm about to teach something, I make a list of all the things that I think are really important. And they're never normally in any kind of in particular order. But the first one is sometimes we have to set little micro goals. And I feel like a lot of times we set big goals. Like you need to get back to school. Well, you haven't been in school in 3 months. So that's a very big goal. But you're actually not even getting out of bed. So maybe the smaller goal is you're going to get dressed today, right? Micro goals. Are you going too big? Because when we go big, right? Like, so for my son with ARFID at one point, it might be, I want you to gain 15 pounds. Ironically, now he's taking medicine to help him and he's actually a little overweight. ARFID is so hard to control. You take this medicine to make you hungry and then, wow, like it's working too well. And you're like, but so scary to scale it back. That's a totally separate episode. But micro goals, right? In the beginning, it would just be a goal of him eating 3 meals a day or him eating at all. So are your goals too big? Or do you need to maybe articulate smaller goals? Because maybe your child, teen, or young adult has big goals in their head. And so maybe they're like, my goal is to get back to college, but right now I'm homebound. Or my goal is to get back to high school, but right now I can't leave the house. And so that might be the goal for everybody. Well, yes, we need to get her back to college, or we need to get her back into the physical building of the school. That might be your goal, or it may not be. But what is the small goal? Because everyone's going to feel that failure no matter what. You're not in school, or you're not sleeping in your own room, if that is a concern, or you're not eating, or you are in the shower for 5 hours. And our goal is for you to take a normal shower, quote unquote normal, right? That's a big goal. You want me to go from 5 hours to 20 minutes. That's a big goal. What's the micro goal? Maybe the micro goal is I want you to shower maybe for 4 hours and 35 minutes or 4 hours and 45 minutes. Or I want you to use this cup of soap, not the whole bottle of soap, right? So finding a doable micro goal is really important because we want them to feel success. Imagine if you went to work every day and your boss was like, this is horrible. Whatever you did yesterday, horrible. Redo it. And then you do it again. And your boss is like, nope, not knocking out of the park. This is horrible. Redo it. By the end of the week, you're going to be like, what's the point? He never likes what I do. I never make him happy. What's the point? That's kind of how it feels when you never hit those big goals for anxiety or OCD. You know, the big goal is everyone's looking at you to get back to school and you're never doing it. And so you feel like a failure. So you give up, you lose hope. And hope is really the name of the game for self-esteem and for anxiety and OCD. And you're going to find that a lot of these, well, some of them are going to help with the journey of anxiety or OCD along with self-esteem. This one in particular is very good for, the anxiety and OCD journey in particular. Some of them aren't going to be as much, but finding those micro goals, really important. And maybe you coming up with them because they're not going to necessarily see it. And so when they beat themselves up and they say, oh my gosh, I'm not making progress. I can't even get out of bed and I can't even you know what? Today you got out of bed at 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. I'm trying to use some extreme examples. And a lot of times you don't get out of bed at all. Is there something that you can see, that you can celebrate, that's small? And I know a lot of times parents are in such a negative space themselves that they can't see it. Or they'll think, why am I going to celebrate that he got out of bed at 3 p.m.? That's not good. Yeah, but yesterday he got out of bed at 6 p.m. Or yesterday he didn't get out of bed at all. I find that I do this. I'm doing this with my son a lot where he's dysregulated and he gets really upset. He'll explode. And in the past, he would say really scary things about himself and others, and he would be really scary and overwhelming for the whole family. And then it would take him like an hour to calm down. It was a very big thing, and it was very exhausting. And at one point, it was happening multiple times a week. And he's been working on it, and he's been doing much better. And so recently, he had kind of what I'm noticing lately is he'll have kind of like a dysregulated moment where he'll get really upset and he'll kind of start revving up a little bit. And then instead of saying the usual things that he used to say, he'll say, I'm so mad that I'm mad. I'm so annoyed that I'm still getting this frustrated. I'm so upset that I can't calm myself down. And I would say to him, you've come a long way. The fact that you can even articulate that and say that in this moment is progress. The fact that you are calming down in 10 minutes instead of 60 minutes is huge. So what things can you celebrate with your child? And don't compare it to the rest of the world of I'm celebrating that my child got out of bed for 2 hours a day and most kids get out of bed in the morning. Throw normal out the window because that's not what's happening. And we have to live in the parameters of what you are dealing with and what your world is and what's progress for your child, and celebrate that because they'll feel that. Our excitement is contagious. Our enthusiasm and encouragement is contagious. Our hope is contagious. And that's really important. Okay, on to the next thing. And this is totally separate, unrelated to the last one. It can be really helpful if they're useful. And so when you are struggling, whether that is mentally or physically, it's like you have a victim mentality. Like when, I'm trying to think of an example. Like when my husband passed away, that was 3 years ago already, for those of you that weren't aware that happened to me. I felt like such a victim. Like I was in such a weird role where everybody was like concerned about me and caring about me and how can they help me. And it made me feel worse on some level. I mean, it was nice that people did that and I appreciate it, but I'm such a helper that was really therapeutic for me to be in a helping role. And so it's a common thing that people feel better when they are pulled into a helping position, a helping role, especially our kids who are the identified problem in our home, even though we would never say that, hopefully, but it can feel that way and they can certainly feel it. That when we turn the tables around and we make them helpful to others, we're giving them a helpful role, that can be really helpful for their self-identity, their self-esteem, and their overall mental health. And this will look different for each kid because it doesn't mean that you assign them a helping role. Like, oh, from now on, you're going to do the dishes. That's really helpful. Thank you. That's not what I mean. It's finding something that they genuinely thrive at, that they sparkle. Somebody once said, "What does she mean when she says find the sparkle in everything you do?" Can she explain that? And it's what I'm talking about, right? Like finding the sparkle, finding the passion, finding the fun, finding the joy. What do they sparkle at? Where do you see their light? They light up when they are doing this or being like this. That's what you want to tap into. This isn't about how they can help you or the household. This is where they shine. And every kid shines somewhere, and you might have to just observe and think about it for a while. But there's a little bit of light in everybody. And so, do they like to share facts? Are they like really good at telling you about certain things and how they work or how they function? Are they really great at knowing some type of music or video game or movie or type of movies? So are facts their thing? Like, tell me more about those movies. You're so into that. Explain that to me. Let me get into that with you, right? That's giving them something to be the expert at. It's giving them a position of authority or position of knowledge, and it's switching the roles around for a brief period of time where they get to be the expert or they get to be the one who is helping someone else. Are they funny? Do they tell jokes? Do they make you laugh? And I'll talk about how to highlight these things in a second, but I just wanted to give you like some examples. Do they like volunteering? Now, sometimes some kids are not doing well and they can't volunteer outside of the house, although that is a really helpful thing. Call up your local pet shelter. And I don't know why I said pet shelter, animal shelter or homeless shelter. Obviously, you don't want to pick something that triggers their anxiety or OCD theme, but is there something they can do? One thing that I have found in my community, and I've had to search for it, so you might have to search for it, is there are a lot of opportunities to volunteer at home. And so now that might be taxing and boring and hard, and so that's not going to be their sparkle. But for some kids, giving to other people feels good. They're doing something to help somebody else, and that can be really helpful. So there are lots of organizations that make cards and boxes for foster children or homeless children or veterans. You're Not Alone Notes does anonymous notes that go to people who are suffering with OCD or are in residential care. And so your child can make notes for them. You can go to their website at notalonenotes.org and find out how you can volunteer and do that. Those are really simple ways. There are a lot of apps, volunteering apps that are local or national, and you can filter them through home volunteering options. And there are tons. I know at my house, my daughter is actually in National Honor Society, just an American thing, and they have to have a certain amount of volunteer hours. And so we've had to search for volunteer hours, and there are like 2 different volunteer opportunities that are making cards at home. And one of them is like decorating sandwich bags, like lunch sacks, because they put snacks in there for kids that are low income, and they give them to the schools. And so we do that at home, and then we drop them off at the nonprofit. So there's lots of options there. Some other ones are cooking. Do they enjoy cooking? Can they bake something for the family, or can they take on a meal? That's just a great way to show appreciation for them to do something for other people. Now, obviously, if these fall flat, this isn't your child's thing. Can they help with a pet? Can they train the pet, or can they just love on the pet? Are they the pet whisperer in the house? Where is a little string that you can pull that they get to be the expert, or they get to be the best at? You're the blank blank in our house, right? Like you're the science whiz in our house, or you're the dog whisperer, or you're the best at making these special snacks for us, or you're giving back. Whatever you can do. And then you highlight that, even in your own struggles, you are making jokes, or you are cooking for us, or you're loving on the pet, and the pet needs you, the pet loves you. To be needed and to be wanted and to be there for other people is very, very therapeutic. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And after the break, I'm going to talk to you about some other concrete ways that you can build your child's self-esteem. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it. So it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com. Welcome back. So before the break, I was talking about some concrete ways that you can build your child's self-esteem, including setting micro goals that the child can feel success, feeling useful by finding a role where they are the expert or they are the one in authority. And so that can be really helpful as well. We talked about highlighting their progress, even if it feels like it's not progress, to compare them to themselves and not comparing them to other people. And I want to move into a couple of other options as well. Igniting their passion in general. So moving away from just helping others, what's something that they're passionate about? And can you find a way to support them in that passion? And a lot of times it doesn't take much. They might be into drawing, and so you might get them a drawing class. You can go to outschool.com. I think it's Outschool. Let me double check that. Yeah, outschool.com. And they have a zillion different types of classes. They've got classes on crocheting and classes on Minecraft, classes on 3D printing, classes on art. And so that can really build self-esteem. Maybe I can't leave my house, and I'm using that as an extreme example because I want this to be, even if your child's not even able to function at all, these are some things that maybe they can do. There's something really nice about doing an art class and showing your family members, look at this art that I made, or I can show it to peers in my group. Look what I made. That can be really helpful. So finding their passion, it may not be your passion, and that is okay. I think it's really important. I think sometimes we want our kids to be into something to the point where it makes them feel bad. This happened recently with my son, and I still feel really bad about it. He's really good at drums, and I was paying for him to have an hour drum lesson every week. And it was actually 2 30-minute drum lessons back to back that I would pay for because I thought he could benefit from a longer one. And he's been doing drums for a few years, and he's really talented. And I spent a lot of money on his drum kit, and it was just making him feel bad. He didn't really want to do drums anymore. He wasn't into it. He wasn't practicing. So every week when he went, he felt bad. And so he's like, I don't really want to do drum lessons anymore. And I have to honor that. And I can't be like, well, I just paid so much money for your drum kit and I've been spending so much money on it. It's not about me. It's about our kids. And so he doesn't have very many interests right now, but he's really into gaming. And I'm not a fan, but that's where he's at. I can't change that. He's a teenager. It's like I can't tell him what to be into. I want to honor where he's at, and I don't want to make him feel worse. And so that's okay. The drum kit went in the garage. It's so sad. But I said, you're allowed to choose what you want to do. Support them in allowing them to make their own decisions, even if it's not what we want. We want them to be the best volleyball player or the best swimmer, and they don't feel like doing it anymore, and they genuinely don't want to do it. Why are we forcing them? That's just my parenting style. But I do feel like that really feeds into self-esteem, because if they're really forced to do things that they don't want to do, that they don't have to do, some things they have to do, but if we're forcing them to do things because they're good at it, but you're good at it, it's such a shame that you're not going to do it. They don't want to do it, right? And the more we force them to do something they don't want to do, the more they're never going to want to do it. When we say, okay, you can circle back if you want to. You're really talented at that, and they'll be there for you, and we can always sign you back up for lessons, and that's up to you. You get to be your own decision maker in lots of areas, because a lot of things they don't get to decide. So I think empowering them to make their own decisions and us supporting them in their decisions, regardless of whether it makes us feel great or not, I think is important. The other thing I want to mention is listening for the guilt, so we can help reframe it. When he decided not to do drum lessons anymore, I could hear the guilt. And I would said to him, are you feeling bad? Because he just kept saying, I feel so bad. I feel so bad. And I said, are you feeling bad because you're going to miss drums and you think that maybe it's a bad decision and you're not sure? Or are you feeling bad because you're sad for your teacher because you've been seeing him for so long? Or are you feeling bad because you think you're disappointing me? When you say you feel bad, what do you mean? So get clarification when you're hearing guilt or you're hearing shame. Where is that coming from? And he said, well, I feel bad because I don't want to hurt the teacher's feelings. And I feel bad that I'm giving up on something that you think I'm good at. So then I was able to reframe that and say, you can always go back to this teacher. Your teacher, students come and go. And they expect this. This is the relationship that you have, just like therapists come and go. Like you have coaches that come and go. This is just part of that cycle. And it's expected that you're not going to stay there forever and you're going to go. So you shouldn't have to feel bad, even though that's how you feel. And then reframing the guilt around me, like just because you're good at drums doesn't mean you have to do it. I want you to be happy, and your happiness, only you know what makes you happy. And that will shift and change over time. And you might be into this one day and then you're into that. You're a kid. You don't have to commit yourself for life on something that you like because you liked it at one point. So listen for the guilt. Where are they feeling guilty? Where do they feel bad about themselves? What things are they saying all the time that put themselselves down? Self-esteem is not a generic thing. Self-esteem is a very personal thing, and it's different for each kid. And we all have insecurities that impact our self-esteem. And you just have to figure out where they are for your child, because it's not like, oh, they just have low self-esteem. There are certain pain points that are worse than others. And so what is that for your child? What are you hearing them say? I feel bad because I'm not like everyone else. I feel bad because I can't go to school, or I feel bad because I'm such a burden on the family, or I'm trying to think of some other ones that you might hear that aren't related to like how it's impacting other people. Maybe I get angry all the time, and I'm angry at you because you keep pushing me to work on my anxiety and OCD and I don't want to. Listen for the guilt and reframe it. And that can be important. The other day, my son he's online schooling, and he accidentally, so they're able to take their exams twice, which I think is super nice. So there's wiggle room to go back and correct your things. And so, or maybe that wasn't the case. I don't think that was the case in this situation. It was like a semester exam. Anyway, he took the exam before his Zoom call where they were going to go over what this exam would have on it. And so he took it, he did poorly on it. And then I said, what? You can't retake it? And he said, no, you can't retake these. And then I was like, oh my gosh, but you should have waited for your Zoom call because they would have gone over what you needed to study. So the whole rest of the day, he's like, I feel so stupid. I just ruined my grade. I'm so dumb. So listen for those type of things, those little moments of of self-hate and berating themselves, because they're there a lot of times. They're really obviously there throughout the day for some of our kids. And those are opportunities to reframe how they're perceiving those issues in the moment. And so I said to him in that moment, even though I was equally annoyed that he took the test without waiting, like I had said, to do the Zoom call. So I had to put my frustration aside and say, you know what? Just chalk it up to a lesson. It's a life lesson. You know how this feels now. You're like, man, this feels bad. And so next time you're going to want to remember to just do the Zoom call first. And you're in 8th grade and you're going into 9th grade. And so it doesn't really count. That's what I tell him, because he gets straight A's. So I can tell him this. I'm like, it doesn't really count. You're in 8th grade. So it is what it is. You still have an A in science. So don't worry about it, because you did so well the whole rest of the year. But this also will really help you next year, because next year you're going to be like, ooh, I remember how that felt when I just try to rush through and get an exam over without like waiting for the Zoom call, and I'm not going to do it this time. And he's like, yeah, that's true. I won't do that next time. I don't like the way this feels. And so it turned into a life lesson instead of a guilt that had no positive byproduct to it. It was like, I just feel bad, and it just reconfirms that I'm a horrible person and that I'm lazy. No, it's a life lesson, and life lessons are great because we have to have them in order to progress. If we don't have life lessons, we don't improve. We improve by having mistakes. When we have mistakes, we learn. And when we learn, we improve. And that's great. So reframing, look for the reframes when you can. 2 more things that I want to mention before we wrap up. The next one is sometimes self-esteem is really low because they feel like they're the only people on the planet who have their own anxiety and OCD themes. And so they might realize that other people have anxiety or other people have OCD, but they feel like nobody has their particular struggle. So normalizing that experience is really important for them to feel like they're not alone, they're not crazy, and that what they're experiencing, other people experience as well. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can find a support group. In the AT parenting community, we have a monthly support group for kids and for teens. And so they hear other kids talking about just right OCD or disgust or contamination or moral or separation anxiety or emetophobia, the fear of throw up. They hear other kids talk about it. And one thing that we always do on those calls is I'll say, oh, does anyone else struggle with this? Just raise your hand. And I'll be like, look, half the screen just raised their hand. You are not alone. This is a common concern. And that's just really validating and normalizing for the teen. And that helps their self-esteem, because the self-esteem takes a hit when you're like, I'm the only person who's having intrusive thoughts that are X, Y, and Z. And when you're like, oh my gosh, half the screen just raised their hand. I thought I was the only one. That's really comforting and validating. If you don't have access to a support group, there are other ways, or your child's not willing to do a support group. You could do videos. My YouTube videos, I hope, are used as a tool to normalize kids' struggles. I try to make YouTube videos on topics that are very specific so that people can watch them and be like, oh my gosh, there's a whole video on disgust OCD and restrictive eating. That's me. I want them to be really specific. The other option too, or in conjunction with those, is watching movies. So Turtles All the Way Down just came out. That's a great one, because it's a major motion picture that is showing OCD. And even if it's not your child's OCD or your child's OCD theme, you can say it just shows you that OCD is being discussed even in a film, which is great. And so, or watching Unstuck, an OCD kids movie, is a documentary about OCD. That can be really helpful as well. So lots of options to help normalize the experience of having OCD. And the last thing that I want to end on, which is a bit of a cheesy ending, but I think it's something that's worth saying, is how does your child have some self-love? A lot of times in my house, I'll talk about helping future Natasha, or how am I helping Natasha? Like third person, weird, I know. How does your child show self-love to themselves? And teaching that at a younger age is really helpful, or even in a teenhood. Like we think about that when we're adults, but how often are we trained to think this way? If your feet are cold, go get comfy socks, right? If you want, soak in a bath. Not if they have OCD around washing. That's obviously not good. But What do you do to take care of yourself? Do you want to journal and write? And a lot of times we do these in a prescriptive way. We do these in a way like, you need to use your coping skills. What are your coping skills? Or what are your activities for self-love? You need to journal or go take a walk so your body is moving, or you need to meditate or breathe. And it becomes prescriptive and not like a intuitive thing that they're doing because they want to and it's really enjoyable. So helping them figure out what they want. If I see my child sitting there, I'll say, are you cold? Do you want to go get a blanket and warm yourself up? Or if my child's picking their toes because they have a picking issue, I'll say, do you want some socks for yourself? Right? Getting them to think about what would be convenient for me. When my child is setting himself up for online schooling, I'll be like, do you want to get a pillow so it's comfortable when you're sitting there? Or do you want to bring your drink over? And so sometimes it might be coaching of like, you can make your life a lot easier or more comfortable if you do these things for yourself. And sometimes I'll talk about future Natasha, like, well, I am, I'm trying to think of an example. When we're going on a trip, I'll like put all the luggage out. If we have to wake up at like 6:30 in the morning, I'll put all the luggage out by the garage door. And I'll verbally say, to kind of model this stuff, I'll be like, I'm helping future Natasha, because future Natasha is going to wake up. She's going to be super tired. She's not going to want to get all this heavy luggage into the car. And so I'm having it all prepared so that future Natasha only has to wake you guys up, put her clothes on. I lay out my clothes. I do. Actually, I'm going away in a few days, although this is being recorded way ahead of time. So I'm already back from my trip by now. But like, I literally have my clothes laid out for Thursday, and today's Monday, because I'm preparing for the trip, and I want future Natasha to not have as much stress. And so modeling that for our kids, you can say, like, I'll say things like, well, future Natasha is going to be tired, or future Natasha is not going to want to clean this up, or future Natasha. And I'm like, what about future so-and-so? And I'll use my kids' names. Does future so-and-so, is she going to like that choice? Or do you want to help her out? And so that is a really helpful tool to get them to see not only how they can do some self-love, but they can also do some self-preparing, which can be helpful. And I think a lot of times kids don't think about what they can do to make themselves more comfortable. And making yourselves more comfortable is showing love. Now, sometimes kids are in the other extreme where that's all, they're consumed with that. And so they're in their bed and they got their phone and their video games, and you think that's all they care about. Like, they're only consumed with taking care of their needs. But really, sometimes that's just a coping skill, and they're not. And so it might be, if, taking care of yourself is getting up and feeling good and taking a shower or getting a haircut, or going and sitting outside for a little while and smelling the fresh air, right? That's taking care of yourself too. So it depends on each child. But I hope that this list of concrete ways to help boost your child's self-esteem hit home. And I hope that there were some takeaways there that you can go and practice right away. Because that's always the hope with my podcast episodes, is that I'm giving you at least one nugget that you're like, that I can do, that I'm taking, and I'm going to apply that today. So I hope you found your nugget for today. If you are enjoying my podcast, I always greatly appreciate it when you hit a star and rate it, or if you leave a review. I'm recording this on May 20th, and the last written review I got was a month ago, back at the end of April. So if you have something nice to say, I'll definitely be reading yours next time, because there are none to read. I always like to read a review to show you my appreciation and gratitude, but I've got nothing to read. So if you are finding my podcast helpful, or you've been listening for a while and you're like, oh, I've never left a review, I would greatly appreciate it if you did, and I'll read it next time. And I do hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do, and I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.